Welcome to the Kingdom Educators Podcast, where we empower Christian teachers to grab a hold of heaven's hope-filled perspective so you can activate transformational impact in your classroom and community. I'm your host, Jessica Glover, and I warmly welcome you to wake up to your strategic placement as a kingdom educator, anointed by the Creator and equipped by all of heaven to release the radical goodness of God that will transform lives and reshape education. Welcome, everybody, back to the Kingdom Educators Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Joel Penton, who's founder and CEO of LifeWise Academy. Raise your hand if you've heard about LifeWise. I heard about them about a year and a half ago and was so excited about Bible education coming to schools or kids leaving campus during the school day to come get Bible education. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today and how you can get involved. But first, I want to share a little bit more about Joel because he's got a special background and what brought him to LifeWise. And we'll have him share a little bit more personally in a little bit as well. So he's founder and CEO of LifeWise Academy, like I said, which empowers communities to provide Bible education to their public school students during school hours. The LifeWise Support Center is actually in Hilliard, Ohio. Did I say that right, Joel?
Hilliard, close, yeah.
Hilliard, okay, Ohio. And they've got 409 schools that are being served in 13 states. And I just want to give a shout out to my friends in Washington who just started the first LifeWise, but just excited about this mission. Joel's 15-year career as a ministry leader has been marked by relentless pursuit of impacting students. And Joel founded Relevant Speakers Network, a speakers bureau that has touched more than 3,000 public schools and 2 million students nationwide in 2009. In 2019, he founded LifeWise Academy, which empowers communities to provide Bible education for their public school students during school hours. Joel, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today. I know your schedule is full, and so it's a gift to be able to have this time with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah. Well, I just want to start us out with, one of the things that you mentioned in your intake form was that teachers hold this prominent, very special place in kids' lives, that they leave a mark on their life. And I know that you mentioned that you've had a number of teachers who have held that place of special memory. Would you be willing to share a story or two of how teachers have impacted your own life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that anybody who's been through school, I would put coaches, I think, in the same kind of category. Is that, I had wonderful, wonderful parents, but to have those other adults in your life who are supporting and complementing that investment in your life growing up is critical. And so I think about Mrs. Perry, my English teacher in high school, and how influential she was in my life. I think about some of my coaches, especially my wrestling coaches when I was in middle school. And I think about just when you're at that age that you're developing those, who am I and how am I going to go about this thing of life? What kind of person am I going to be? People who are investing in you can be so critical. And it is clearly that the topics they're teaching on, the subjects are, of course, important, but it's almost the peripheral stuff of how you interact and how you treat others and the relationships you build. And it's one of the reasons why something like LifeWise is so utterly critical, because you can have those same relationships, but centered around not simply history or science, as important as those things are, but can be centered around eternal things of Scripture.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. And I would love to hear, Joel, I know that there's statistics are saying that 20% of students are familiar or go to church or familiar with the things of God. And so that really launched you out on this LifeWise mission of starting this ministry. Will you share a little bit more about maybe stats and the background of LifeWise?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, less than 20% of youth in America attend church regularly. So on any given Sunday, you'd find less than 20%. I've heard it's less than 18% of students in church. However, public schools, students are there because over 90% of students attend public schools. And so ever since I got into ministry, and you mentioned I got into speaking first, that was in part because I want to go and share the message of the hope of Jesus
Mhm.
with students who aren't hearing it on a regular basis. And yes, student age is just kind of what I just said. That's when kids are starting to think through, who am I and what are the answers to these bigger questions of life? Like, why am I here? And is there a point to, to all of this?
Yeah.
It's such a critical time to get that message of hope to them. And so, my career, I started as a traveling speaker, but then people in my hometown told me about this opportunity to provide Bible education to public school students during school hours through this legal practice of released time religious instruction.
Mhm.
And from that moment, I was hooked. We got to be a part of this. We got to bring this to the nation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so powerful. And I think about even our kids who they've grown up knowing the gospel, but aren't even sure how to share it. And I think even LifeWise being a presence on a campus or being an option even encourages them beyond maybe knowing that they have a Christian teacher, but being able to
Correct.
encourage them to share the gospel themselves with one another and that opportunity coming about more easily.
There's no question. So sadly, our society has by and large, has sought to marginalize matters of faith and,
Yeah.
keep that in the corner, keep it just Sunday morning. Like it shouldn't spill into other aspects of life. But Christians know that no way. I mean, our faith encompasses every aspect of who we are.
Yeah.
And yes, something like LifeWise, having an opportunity as part of the school day, part of the school week, in the same way that, like I said, we're getting history, we're getting science, we're getting math. Well, now you have an opportunity to get Bible education. It really does affect the culture because now it's no longer weird to talk about Jesus. It's
Mhm.
no longer weird to talk about the Bible. I mean, you're carrying it to school. It's one of your classes, for goodness sake. And so it kind of brings it back into the culture that, in fact, one of the effects that we didn't even, I guess, think through when we got into this has been so exciting is that culture change and how we've been emboldening Christian students. We primarily started as, hey, here's a way to get the word of God, the gospel to students who aren't being exposed to it. And it continues to be that's the primary purpose. But as you said, the kids who already have that to be able to reinforce that and to bring it
Yeah.
into the other aspects of their life has been really exciting.
Yeah, I would like to know more, and I'm sure listeners do too. Can you speak to what are the technicalities in terms of bringing LifeWise during the day? You talked about release time, and I know many of our listeners have used their faith rights at school to either host a Bible club or have students lead, and then they're like the host teacher during lunchtime, before or after school, or maybe they rent space at their school to host Bible
Right.
club. But how do you get this release time? What does this even look like?
Yeah, it's a little known practice. I mean, I was
Yeah.
in full-time ministry, traveling, speaking for a dozen years before I'd ever heard of it.
Yeah.
You could call it the best kept secret, or you might even call it the greatest missed opportunity
Hmm.
to reach kids because there are more well-known methods of, I guess, what you call equal access. So before or after school, doing something at the school, maybe doing something during lunchtime, making sure it's student-led. This is an
Right.
entirely different strategy. It's an entirely different body of law. And as I mentioned, it's called released time religious instruction. In 1952, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in Zorak v. Clausen that public school students can be released from public school during school hours to receive religious instruction if the program meets three criteria. Number one, it needs to be off school property. Number two, privately funded. And number
Okay.
three, students need parental permission. But as I said, this has been kind of under the radar, underutilized for 70
Right.
years. It's just been practiced here and there in small
Wow.
pockets. And in 2019, we became aware of this and said, hey, what if we created a plug and play program that any community could implement without having to reinvent the wheel? Is it possible communities would begin to implement this? And since then, it's been off to the races.
Wow. And I've gotten to see just a little peek into that world of, I noticed that you guys have such organization with your structure with LifeWise. Like you said, plug and play, but I feel like there's this support system of, find the people in your community that are willing to support this mission and then creating a team. And then there's step by step on getting to the point
Right.
of getting your volunteers and your bus and your location and then prayer support and all of those pieces just taking one step at a time. And then I think you even host like a big event for your volunteers that have launched out during the summertime.
Right.
And I was totally impressed. I'm like, wow, this is so neat. And just knowing too, like even any listeners, I know we have some who listen to this show who are very much supporters of teachers being on mission in our schools, that they're
Right.
Christian teachers who really feel God's call to continue to be the salt and light in dark places, but knowing that he's empowered them by the Holy Spirit. But I just feel like some of them will be called even to give money. And can you speak a little bit to the donation process if people are listening and they feel inclined? What would that look
Sure.
like?
Well, as you kind of even started to outline, it really does take the whole community to pull this off. In fact,
Yes.
at the beginning of this project, we really just sought to answer the question, how could this amazing opportunity be out there for 70 years and almost nobody know about it and it not to be really taking place? And our theory was that it's very challenging. It's just a lot to pull off. So what if we put in place all that infrastructure that you were beginning to outline
Yeah.
so that it's just easier so that people can just pick up the tools that have already been built and integrate the systems. And so anybody in any community can get involved, all the way from signing what we call a community interest list, which is like a petition to say, yes, we want this in our community, to joining a steering committee, to being a volunteer or a LifeWise teacher. But certainly if you are an educator of your local public school, you're likely not going to also at the same time be a teacher in the LifeWise program, but you can be involved by spreading the word. And as you said, donating. At LifeWise, we have kind of a sponsor a student strategy. It costs about $30 a month per
Okay.
student to provide this program. And so we have people all over the country that jump on our website and they either find a local public school, maybe it's a school near them, maybe it's a school in their state, or maybe they just say, hey, wherever this is most needed, I want to sponsor a student. And that's all through our website, lifewise.org.
That's awesome. It's like sponsoring kids in our own nation, maybe in our own
Right.
neighborhoods that need to hear the gospel. Could you share any testimonies with us, Joel, of kids coming to know Jesus and the impact on not only families, but the actual community itself?
Oh, yeah. Well, we hear the stories come in every week, and they're just so fun to read, all the way from kids who clearly had never been exposed to the Bible at all,
Hmm.
but their parents get the flyer. They think, hey, this couldn't hurt. This is this will broaden my child's horizons, and so they sign them up. And we have kids that are walking into churches and they're saying, is this a church? I've never been to a church before. Or we had a kid
Wow.
on the bus recently saying, hey, I don't know what LifeWise is. My parents signed me up. I was told we're going to study the Bible. What's the Bible? Like that was literally
Wow.
their
Yeah.
question. What's the Bible? One little girl, even when the Bible was first put in her hands, her reaction was, the pages are so thin. Because
Hmm.
she'd never, seen Bible pages. Those stories, for whatever reason, are exciting to me because it's, those are the kids who need to be exposed,
Hmm.
who've never heard the gospel before. But then we see even much further down the journey where I was at a church speaking a couple hours away from here, and a family came up to me and said, we just want to thank you for being involved in this. We sent our daughter. She fell in love with Jesus. She asked us, why
Wow.
aren't we going to church? So here we are. And we were all baptized as a family a few weeks ago.
Oh my
And
goodness.
now the
That's
number
exciting.
of it is the number of just photos and videos we've seen of kids who have been baptized and
Wow.
they're in church, and a lot of times they want to wear their LifeWise t-shirt because that's maybe where they first heard about the gospel, or they want to invite their LifeWise teachers.
Hmm.
So we hear those stories a lot and they make sense. I tell people I played football in college, so I have no interest in soccer, but I find myself at a soccer field a lot, and it's only for one reason, and it's because my kids are involved in soccer.
Yeah.
And that's what we see happening with LifeWise. Kids are getting involved, and now they're bringing their families and they're getting involved as well.
Oh, that's so exciting. Man, my mind's just whirling with people just having hearts for different areas to be involved in and the impact that it can have on not only kids getting introduced to the gospel, but like having a relationship with Jesus and then hearing his voice for the first time and even having troubled families like come into
Yeah.
breakthrough. It's really exciting. So, how could Kingdom educators, we really have a heart here to equip teachers that are, on mission, like I said earlier, but to really engage with the voice of God, to follow his leading in their classrooms to be salt and light. How would they, if they feel inclined to start a LifeWise committee, if you will, to
Yeah.
bring it to their area, how do they get involved? What does that look like?
Yeah, we would love to engage with any one of your listeners. First thing you can do is just learn more at lifewise.org. You can see videos and testimonials. You can even see the third-party independent research that demonstrates that when LifeWise is implemented, school attendance goes up, behavior improves.
Awesome.
You can see surveys from public educators who are saying how they see the difference and they love it. And at the end of the day, here's how you can get involved in your community.
Mm-hmm.
Before you leave our website, click find your school, and you can look up any school district in the nation, and you can find out, is there already an effort underway, and where does my community stand in this effort? We have a 10-step launch process.
Okay.
That starts with collecting signatures. I believe I mentioned that, kind of like a petition, and anyone
Yes.
can start that. So if you're a public educator, you could sign your name to that list. You could say, I think this would be great for our community. You could post that on Facebook, send it to friends, say, at the end of the day, I'm probably not going to be the director or the teacher or even on the board, but I know this would be good for my students. And so you can start circulating that. It takes 50 signatures to get started. We like to see 50 people in town raising their hands saying, yeah, we'd love this for our community. At that point, we start building the steering committee and putting together the plan, but it starts with those signatures, and anybody can get that ball rolling.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm excited about the opportunity of getting more of the word out, Joel, and just making this program known, because 13 states, let's grow it to all of them.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, Jessica, things are happening so fast that actually now reverse those numbers. We are
Ooh.
confirmed to serve schools in 31 states.
Oh my gosh, wow.
And we're now confirmed. Now, we haven't launched yet, but
Okay.
that means that we have a plan, we have people in place, and we've talked to the school, and we have a start date and everything.
Okay.
So it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But now I think over half of those, they're already up and running, and we're confirmed now in over 600 schools. So it's just growing very, very rapidly, but it's because local people are saying, we want this for our local students.
Well, I really love it. And I guess I just have one more question for you. How long is the program, and how often does it happen during the week?
Great question. It's very natural for teachers to ask this because, when do you do it? How does it even work? Each student, right? Each student receives LifeWise one time per week for about 45 minutes or so, about what a class period is. And then we work with the school to determine what works best for everybody. So sometimes they're using lunch and recess. And so maybe you have the first graders on Monday and the second graders on Tuesday and the third, et cetera. Other times they're utilizing a time like a library time that is a non-graded time that they'll work into that rotation. Or maybe sometimes there's already an opening in the specials rotation of art and music and gym class, that type of thing. And so it really depends. Again, now we've done it a few hundred times over, we've seen some trends, and we can sit with schools and look at their schedule and give them some options. What we find is that where there's a will, there's a way, and the logistics can be worked out.
Well, I just really appreciate the heart behind LifeWise and you taking a risk with Jesus to step out in faith to begin this ministry, because, it just feels like there's more and more Christians are getting pulled out to go to private or homeschool situations. And the kids that are still going to public school still really need to hear the gospel and be connected or rub shoulders with people who know Jesus. And so this is just a neat way to bring that in. And I love how you have the facts written down about attendance improving, which I know in our local school district, I've been on the board at one of the schools, and that's one of their biggest challenges is attendance. But really, if we think about it, if kids know their purpose and their destiny, they're going to be more inclined to give more during the day because they have some perspective and hope. And so even just having that opportunity once a week could be so powerfully transformative.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the encouragement. Yeah, the Lord's been the one who's doing it. And so we're excited to be along for the ride.
Well, thank you again, Joel, for your time today and to share about this amazing ministry. And again, folks, I will put information that Joel gave you as far as contacting and reaching out to lifewise.org and their resources in the show notes. And if you have questions, you can reach directly out to them because they've got some neat things available on their website. Thanks for tuning into this podcast. Please be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends in education so they too can be strengthened and encouraged in living their kingdom identity out loud in this pivotal hour. And please visit kingdomeducators.com to receive your Kingdom Educator Daily Truth Declarations, my encouraging newsletter, and be the first to know about my newest resources online and in-person events. And be sure to find me on the socials at kingdom.educators. Until next time, don't forget you are a history maker, and what you do every day is transforming lives.